Welcome to our next session about peer-to-peer car sharing. It's a sector that has seen substantial growth in recent years. I am joined by Albert Mangahas, Chief Data Officer for Turo, one of the largest of the car sharing marketplaces. Albert, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Mitra.
So before we get started, I want to acknowledge that in January, Turo filed for an IPO and the company is still in its quiet period. So that is why we will not be discussing financial details, but of course there is still plenty to discuss. And Albert, we certainly appreciate that you joined us.
Excited to be here.
So maybe you can start by giving us a sense of the size and the scope of Turo today.
Absolutely. So I think you mentioned us being the world's largest car sharing marketplace. And just to give more background, this is a platform where guests can book from local Turo hosts. Guests have the choice from an extraordinary selection of over 1,300 makes and models from hosts that are located in over 7,500 cities in the US, Canada, and the UK. And many hosts actually offer delivery. They can actually provide the car and deliver the car to guests where they are and at a time that's convenient for them. And our hosting platform also allows a host to actually transform vehicles that are traditionally an underutilized, depreciating asset that is sitting idle 95% of the time and turning it into an earnings engine. And so our mission is simple, put the 1.5 billion cars to better use.
So let's just talk a bit more about some of those things. Can you talk to us a bit about kind of the evolution of peer-to-peer car sharing? You know, how has this developed and is it still growing?
Yes, it is growing phenomenally over the past couple of years, and you know it's evolved in many different ways. As you mentioned, the idea of peer-to-peer car sharing really didn't exist prior to Turo. This is something that was new to a lot of folks, and now millions of guests and thousands, hundreds of thousands of hosts have experienced this amazing new way of being able to, again, get access to vehicles they otherwise wouldn't have been able to. And as a host, be able to monetize on, again, these assets that are typically depreciating, day by day. And so a lot of explosive growth, specifically last year, as Turo hosts have really stepped in to solve and make travel happen. There was the supply shortage in terms of being able to find rental cars, and Turo hosts were able to solve that problem last year, and we're anticipating that it's going to be difficult to book cars again this coming summer. And Turo hosts are here ready, waiting for guests to start booking early.
Do you find that this appeals to a certain segment of the market based on your data?
Finding is actually Turo provides a unique value proposition for a variety of different segments. On the guest side, whether if you're needing that all-wheel drive to go to the mountains, or you're looking for a convertible to go down the coast, or if you've got a family like mine and I need to fit all of my children in the vehicle, you can find a minivan that fits your needs, that comes with car seats. A lot of these different use cases are really, really exciting. One exciting trend that we've also been seeing is around electric vehicles. With the surging gas prices, Turo is providing a unique opportunity to get guests for the first time behind electric vehicles or alternative energy type vehicles that will offset, not have to worry about the cost of gas, but also try these vehicles for the first time. And this concept of try it before you buy it is a perfect place to do that on Turo.
Do you happen to know what percentage of your cars are electric vehicles?
So we actually have the adoption on EVs is extremely high on Turo compared to the US average. Depending on the different metrics that you're looking at, in terms of one of the metrics that we look at is looking at our gross booking volume. And nearly 15% of our volume is coming from EVs or alternative energy type vehicles.
Okay, so let's talk a bit more about what differentiates the car share customer from someone that maybe uses, first of all, let's talk about the comparison with ride share, like an Uber or a Lyft. What are some of the differences there as to who you're serving?
So one of the key differentiators is just more the use case of duration and how long people are using Turo for their trips. Our average duration is roughly around 4 days. And so this is something where folks are taking that week-long vacation or a weekend getaway, and all these different use cases where Ride sharing provides its purposes for more local mobility, doing that long distance travel and having the flexibility of having the car ready whenever you're needing to go and stop. That's where Turo is definitely unique and plays into the longer duration mobility.
Okay. And then what about versus traditional rental car? You know, you spoke to the fact that we certainly saw lack of supply and some elevated pricing and such related to traditional car rental. Was that an opportunity potentially to expose more people to the what you're offering, and what are you seeing there as far as the audiences?
So one of the really key differentiators that we get excited about, again, it goes back to that selection. Having the option of over 1,300 makes and models is something that is something you can't really get anywhere else. And again, there's so many use cases for needing to book a car, and that Turo is a perfect option to be able to fulfill those needs. And because there's so many different options, that means there's also a lot of options in terms of price points. And if you're looking for something that is as cost efficient as possible, that's available on Turo. If you're looking something for a little bit more unique and exotic, that's also available. And so there's this wide range, again, based off of everyone's needs, both from a selection as well as price.
Let's talk a bit about opportunities for innovation. Using technology to improve, let's say, the user experience, both for the host and for the drivers, the user customers. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, as Turo is a mobile-first company, and so something that we're absolutely obsessed with is making sure that comes to mind first, as well as just making sure we're obsessed with the user experience. This is something that we want to make sure both guests and host have the best experience possible when they're going through a trip on Turo. And one of the things that we've invested in is to create this seamless check-in and check-out experience, for example. And that's all, again, done on the mobile app. And for specific makes and models, we actually provide a contactless unlocking tool, which is what we call Turo Go, to be able to facilitate that, again, using the technology and creating this really seamless experience for both guests and for hosts.
Tell me a bit more about that. Is that technology then that Turo kind of pays to and has installed, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's actually a software-based application that actually lives within the Turo app. Doesn't require any installation. This is where, based off makes and models that support the software, it allows us to tap into that technology to be able to do that remote unlocking through the Turo app.
Okay. I'm curious, of course, when I start to think about Turo and, other companies in this space, I, of course, think to Airbnb, as a similar, and, there are other sectors, of course, we've started to see it in RVs with RV Share and some others, but really thinking about Airbnb and Vrbo and some of those as some of the earlier creators of this peer-to-peer sharing economy type of product. Can you speak at all to anything that maybe Turo has learned from watching others in this space?
Yeah, something that we find excited about this space is really just around how both from a peer-to-peer standpoint, guest demand or host and supply, they both win in this model. And it's exciting to be able to then unlock that mutual benefit where, again, guests are getting access to vehicles they otherwise wouldn't have, and the host having the ability to make earnings off of that. And it's a great relationship, and what makes the marketplace a thriving kind of flywheel. And what gets us excited is that it's a win-win for everyone.
Anything else that, certainly along the way with the development, let's say specifically of Airbnb, there have been some bumps in the road, and some issues they've had to face and all of that. I'm just curious, any kind of learnings out of that have come for you as far as, what to do or what to avoid?
Yeah, great question. So there are a lot of different things that we've learned ourselves over the years, and we've been around since the early 2011, and there's been a lot of developments in terms of how we've scaled as a marketplace and how do we manage supply and demand. But the bottom line, where it all comes back to, is just making sure we deliver an amazing customer experience for both the guests and the host. And it comes back to really being centered on that, and that's something that we've been focused on from day one and we'll continue to focus on. And as long as we hopefully continue to drive amazing experiences for our customers, they'll continue to come back and find more new use cases to use Turo, which is always exciting to hear.
I know you have a partnership with Kayak, correct? And also with Delta Airlines. Can you tell us a bit about those partnerships and any others that you have with partners in the travel industry?
Yeah, we're really, really excited to be partnering with a handful of these key travel players, Kayak, Delta, Capital One, Hopper, Expedia, to name a few. And it's really been able to really elevate the car booking experience. It's unlocking Turo to be able to be visible to a larger demographic of customers, as well as showing customers that there's a lot more selection available when they land on the Turo site and can see wherever their destination is. There's all these options that otherwise wouldn't really be available in the traditional means of booking a car.
Do you have anything more that you can share about your distribution strategy? Are there new avenues that you're pursuing?
There's a lot of different options that we're exploring, both domestically as well as international, in terms of growth strategies. I think the one thing that I can really speak to today about is just that there's just still a lot of opportunity here in the US, and in Canada and the UK are key travel markets, where there's, again, the 1.5 billion cars that we would put to better use. There's a lot more growth that we have here in the traditional means of just making sure we introduce more and more Turo hosts to the platform. And allow them to see the benefits of what Turo hosting, and again, turning a depreciating asset into that earnings engine for each and every host that does it.
Do you see from your data, are you seeing uptake from business travelers as well?
We do have, and then we've always had a segment of business travel. I'd say our core segment has been more on the leisure segment. With that said, I think with the evolution of work from home and all these things have created these unique use cases now where folks are using travel in a non-traditional sense of, they don't have a home location. And as a result, sometimes they need a car. And Turo fills in this need quite nicely, where it is a temporary use case. They're traveling in a certain place, and that fits in quite nicely. And so it's an exciting new option and a new way to use Turo.
Can you talk to me a bit about your different categories of hosts? If I understand correctly, there are consumer hosts, there are small business hosts, and there are professional hosts. Help me understand those differences.
So just like guests, there's a lot of different types of hosts that use Turo. And on the host side, we can start with our consumer host, which traditionally has 1 to 2 cars. It's a more casual use of Turo. And an example that I can share that we've heard lots of stories are where there's that college student that is using Turo just to book their car a few days a month, just to help offset the cost of car ownership. To a small business host, someone that has 3 to maybe 9 cars, that is starting to actually build a business on this and is building their own mini fleet. And you take that to the next level, which are professional hosts, which have 10 or more cars, and they're really taking this even more seriously in terms of offering, building a whole business around this in terms of the cleaning services and delivery and all that, and providing a wide selection of additional exciting cars for guests to book.
And then what around sustainability? I know you have the offsets that you initiated, I think, in the last year or two. And you mentioned about the uptake on electric vehicles. Anything else, or for example, maybe an incentive for people to purchase and put electric vehicles onto the marketplace?
Yeah, it's a exciting world around EVs is really where we're starting to put our focus on. And I think there's lots to do here. We've already seen this organic, explosive growth on electric vehicles on the Turo platform. Over the years, we've seen 100x growth in our EV supply. We're pacing faster than the national adoption of EV vehicles in a traditional sense from a car ownership standpoint. And I think we're barely scratching the surface of more that we can do here, which potentially could include some more incentives in the future. So we're excited to go down that path shortly.
Wonderful. And finally, before we wrap up, I guess I would just ask if you can share your thoughts. I know you touched on this a bit, but just a little bit about the future as it relates, as much as you can share about Turo, and then just broadly about peer-to-peer car sharing. I mean, what do you see happening in that area?
Yeah, what I can share is that we're really excited about the future and what's ahead of us. There's a huge opportunity that's ahead of us. There's a lot more growth opportunity here in the U.S., Canada, UK, as well as other countries that we're not in yet, but we're excited to hopefully be in the future. And I think with all that said, I think what we're also seeing is that this coming summer, demand is heating up. We're really excited that travel is still booming, and people are still excited to get out there, and we're pushing the envelope of new ways for folks to try new vehicles. Electric vehicles is one of those areas where, again, we're hoping more and more people take advantage of this opportunity to try it for the first time. Again, offset and mitigate having to pay for these really, really high gas prices. So to wrap it up, I think the one thing we would encourage everyone is just to book early. Supply is starting to run out in some exciting markets. And so if you're looking for travel, remember to book those cars early.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting as you reference that, because just getting back to that thought about any correspondence or correlation with Airbnb, certainly we've heard about, inventory constraints at times in the rental market as interest has picked up. So I would just ask, is that something, that has become an issue for you as interest builds from the consumer side to ensure you have the inventory in all of your markets?
Yeah, it's the beauty of the Turo marketplace and it being peer-to-peer is that the ability and flexibility that we have to grow supply. A good example of this was, last summer, the rental car crunch. Hawaii is a great example, or a lot of other markets where there was a lot of demand, where hosts were finding additional supply themselves, whether that's their family members' cars, their neighbors' cars, and more cars to be able to very quickly and rapidly add to the platform to be able to meet the demand. And so it's exciting that we can see that happen in the past. We expect it to happen again this summer. And so it's something that works really well for us.
Wonderful. Well, we are out of time. Albert Mangahas from Turo, thank you so much for joining us on PhocusWire Pulse.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mitra.
Bye-bye.